Welcome to Politics Today on Channel Television. I'm Sulaiman Alede. Recall it wasn't a rosy relationship between the executive and the National Assembly in 2016. Controversies over the 2016 budget, as well as the delay in the passage, suggested that there was a rift between the executive and legislature. Time again, we also saw the legislature throwing out proposals coming from the presidency in what may have heightened the political undercurrent between the executive and the legislature. Recall the lawmakers had taken a tough stance on some policies and even proposals from the presidency. Some of the events that have appeared as a major standoff between the two major arms of government. For example, the Senate throwing out the proposal to get a loan of about $30 billion asking for more information. The MTF proposal too suffered a similar treatment. Some of the lawmakers have even accused some of the president's cabinet members of incompetence in what they call a shoddy presentation of the 2016 budget proposal. 46 non-Korea ambassador nominees via the president were also rejected. In all of that, many are asking what is it that we'll be looking at in 2017 in terms of relationship between the legislature and the executive. That will be our talking point today, plus some other expectations from Nigerians living in the diaspora, asking them what they want to see from the government of the day. Today we'll be speaking with two gentlemen. Samson Osagie, Honorable Samson Osagie, was a member of the National House of Representatives, and of course will also be going to the United Kingdom, where Spencer Anyelewu will be joining us via Skype to look at some of the issues we'll be looking at today. But starting off today, before we move to our Abuja studios, we have Spencer. And Spencer, bring us up to speed. For many, okay, I understand my two guests are not ready yet. But again, if you look at what is happening, these are some of the things we'll be looking at. Perhaps we had started off talking about expectations from Nigerians for the year 2017, and we've looked at what security holds for us, and the expectation by Nigerians is they would want to see some form of rehabilitation for the displaced persons in the displaced persons camp in some other parts of the country, specifically in Nigeria's northeast. They also would love to see the government do something about education for those in Nigeria's northeast, specifically for the Chibok girls and those in the surrounding communities. And the expectation also went on to touch on the budget, which they still think that if we look at the oil benchmark, which it was pegged on, and also look at what some members of OPEC had done recently, cutting output for production, it would seem as if it's going to be topsy-turvy in one other aspect, looking at the Russian equation coming in as non-OPEC member, and of course the sale of shale oil. These are some of the dynamics some other policy analysts have looked at on the program in the course of the week. But going forward is what we're trying to highlight on the program. Now we're now being joined from our Abuja studios by Honorable Samson Osagie. Good evening and thanks for joining us. Very quickly, a whole lot has happened in the year 2016. Being someone who is very familiar with the business of lawmaking from the National Assembly, tell us what you think, looking at what we had seen in 2016 and being also a party man. Do you expect anything quite different from what we saw in 2016 this year?
Well, thank you, Suleiman. It's nice to be with you this evening on this all-important topic that borders on our democratic governance as a nation. It is not for fun that the framers of our Constitution allocated legislative, executive, and judicial powers in Section 4, 5, and 6 of the 1999 Constitution as amended to the three organs of government. No doubt that the background to the inauguration of the 8th Assembly leading to the leadership crisis have impacted very negatively on the legislature-executive relationship. But it could be better, really, if the dynamics of ensuring a good and smooth relationship between the executive and the legislature are put in place properly for both organs of government to appreciate their role towards the mass of the people. And I say this against the backdrop of one's experience in the legislature. You must understand that it is the president, the vice president, and all members of the National Assembly that are elected to represent the Nigerian people, especially at the federal level. And if that is understood, it therefore means that appointees of Mr. President must accord due respect to members of the National Assembly the same way they accord due respect to their appointor, who is Mr. President. And I believe that part of the problems that have existed between the legislature and the executive are not problems that the president or the presidency itself has induced, but by the actions or inactions or omissions or commissions of some appointees of Mr. President. Under normal circumstances, an appointee of Mr. President is supposed to understand that the National Assembly is what makes a difference between a democracy and an authoritarian government, or a government that is not elected into office. And so when the president appoints liaison officers between the National Assembly and the presidency, those officers are supposed to be allowed to manage the relationship between the executive and the legislature. A situation where other appointees of the president begin to attack the National Assembly, in a manner that is unbecoming of a responsible public officer can never be accepted by the legislature, because they are also elected by their constituents to represent them. And I believe that the engagement that the presidency and the National Assembly have constantly carried out is enough to smoothen the rough edges. And so one should not expect that other appointees should do anything contrary to that relationship that is being built. And I believe that going forward in 2017, and given the harsh economic conditions of our nation, all appointees of government and all elected officials must understand that what is more paramount, in our democracy today is to ensure the happiness of the greatest number of Nigerians. And if that is the focus for everybody, whether elected or not elected, then efforts that are being made by the legislature and efforts that are being made by the executive to attain this goal must be pursued with that common purpose. And I believe that if we have this at the back of our mind and accord respect to every organ of government, not minding whose source is God, particularly in instances where there are issues, to be debated and decisions reached by the National Assembly, I think we'll have a better relationship. For now, I believe that the 2017 budget will be a test case by which we are to understand a better relationship between the executive and the legislature. And I'm very hopeful that we are not likely to have the kind of fisticuffs, legislative fisticuffs with the executive that we have had in the past.